Welcome to the Defining Moments podcast. I am Rabbi David Fine. Today we're joined by Roni Bluth, whose life changed dramatically on October 9th, 2023, just 2 days after the beginning of the war, when her husband Pitzi was severely wounded in a firefight on Israel's northern border. The bullet missed his brainstem by just 1 millimeter. In those terrifying moments when Roni was asked at the hospital, "Are you here for the injured or the dead?" began a journey that countless families of wounded soldiers face, a path that needs to be understood. From explaining to her 8-year-old daughter why dad couldn't speak with his jaws wired shut, to eventually putting on a uniform herself to serve in the reserves, Roni's story reveals both the intense challenges these families endure and the remarkable resilience they discover. Today, we'll explore how Roni transformed trauma into purpose and how her family found their way to those good days, Yamim Tovim, that would come again, even while navigating a reality forever changed by injury. We'll also discuss the crucial support these families need, support that often goes unrecognized in the shadow of war. Welcome to the Defining Moments podcast. I'm Rabbi David Fine, and today I'm very happy to host Roni Bluth. Welcome, Roni.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So as we were just talking before the podcast started, you're usually on this side of the microphone interviewing other people. So before we get into your story, let's give an ad so that more people listen to your podcast, because the issue that we're going to discuss today, mostly the wives and family of wounded soldiers and the long road that they have to take. Why don't you tell us about your podcast?
Okay, so thank you for the platform. So Alumot Krav is the name of the podcast. It sheds light on the women, the personal story of taking care of their husbands injured in the war. Each episode, I interview a different woman. She shares her personal story, the emotional and physical challenges along the road, the resilience needed to balance life, children, career, and hopefully the podcast would, I really hope, the aim is to amplify the voices that usually go unheard.
And your podcast is in Hebrew, correct?
The podcast is in Hebrew, but stay tuned because there will be some episodes in English.
Okay, great. So let's start just with briefly tell us about who you are, just in a few.
Okay. So I'm Roni Bluth. I'm married to Pitzi.
When I was reading all the articles you sent me, what does Pitzi stand for? Yeah, okay. I couldn't figure it out. Usually you could figure out from nicknames what the real name is.
When we just started dating, so we spoke on the phone, and he's like, "Okay, you have any further questions for me?" And I'm like, "No." And he asked me, "You don't want to know why my name is Pitzi?" I was like, yeah. I crossed my mind, forgot to ask you. So Pitzi, he's the youngest of 8. And Nevuah she'egshima et atzma. So he's the youngest. His formal name is Yitzchak, but if you call him Yitzchak, he won't turn around. That's it. So also in the Ketubah, his name is Pitzi.
Oh, really? Wow.
Pitzi, really, yeah. So Pitzi, the youngest.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So you were going to tell us a little about yourself.
Yes. So I'm married to Pitzi. We have three children. And another one on the way.
Yes, we should mention to the audience that you're due in less than 2 weeks, right? A week and a half.
Less than a week,
so
yeah.
We may have to interrupt in the middle.
That would be weird. So we have Noam, she's almost 10. David will celebrate his 7th birthday on Shushan Purim. And Itai, the youngest for now, he's 3 years old. What else can I say? Before the war, I was a technical project manager, doing my thing, like regular life, trying to, balance everything, juggling, normal.
And Pitzi, what did he do before the war?
Pitzi worked for the government. That's all I can say.
And you live in?
We live in Tzofim. Tzofim is in the Shomron, pretty close to Kfar Saba.
Great. So October 7th in Tzofim, early in the morning. Tell us what happened.
So for us, October 7th didn't start early in the morning. We slept and no one woke up. We had no sirens. Casual Simchat Torah. Suddenly, I hear knocks on the door, and I see Pizzi going. He went to open the door. I heard my cousin, who lives like really close to us, and Pizzi whispering. I came out. I see Pizzi on the sofa with his cell phone, which is not. It's not common, but it is because of his job. But like holding his phone in one hand and the other, like grabbing his holding his head and saying, "Roni, what chaos." That moment I understood like something had happened. Like, what are you talking about?
Just say that again, Roni. What was the next word?
What chaos? Like, מטורף, כאילו. איזה chaos? ברדק.
Chaos.
Yeah, chaos. Right. In Hebrew, ברדק. Like, what's going on? Like, tell me. And the kids are like waking up and you're trying to calm everything down. Like, everything is okay. And like he's saying there's war in the South. I need to get prepared. So he left to his work, and I stayed with the kids. And I remember we live in Tzofim, which is a yishuv, and it's Simchat Torah. Usually you hear voices of laughter and like normal Simchat Torah morning, cheerful and from the synagogue. And I walked out to the balcony. I was viewing the main street of the yishuv. And I remember, well, I wasn't born and I wasn't alive during Yom Kippur War. But I remember the stories from my grandparents.
I was 5 years old, so I don't really remember all that much either. And I was in the United States, so.
Yeah, so you hear from stories. Sometimes because you hear stories so many times, you feel like as if you lived during that period. And I remember people said how at 1 p.m. of Yom Kippur, there was a siren and all the men left the synagogue with the talitot and just went to
wherever they had to go.
And what I saw was like exactly the same as I pictured it in my mind. You see like every few minutes, a different family goes out like to the car and with the husband with the uniform and the talit and saying goodbye, hugging and saying goodbye. And that was very, very powerful. And the understanding that something else is happening now in the country.
So tell us what happened with Pizzi.
So Pizzi left to work and I stayed with the kids. And, you have like the conflict of opening the phone and understanding exactly what's going on. We have a lot of friends in the yeshuv. The yeshuv is like also secular or also religious. People started talking about what's going on. Most of the men left. We stayed only the women. And we gathered together. After a few hours, Pizzi came back and he said that he was called up to Miluim, to reserve.
And what unit or what does he do in the army?
Pizzi was an officer in a special unit, Egoz.
Oh, my son was in Egoz.
So we're in good company. Golani, it's also something you have to say. He was an officer. He had his own team, and as they finished the mandatory service, they continued together to be the unit, like the special team that secures and guards the head of the brigade, like the brigade company commander of a certain unit up north. Okay, that was their mission. So he was called up to the Tzafon, to up north. So he said he's leaving. He organized his bag, and I told him you have to go and say bye to Noam. Noam wasn't home. Our oldest, she wasn't home. I don't know why I did that. I usually don't make a fuss of everything. I had a feeling, just go and say bye. She rushed back home from her friend with tears in her eyes. She said,
"Remind us how old she is."
She's almost 10. Back then she was 8. And she said, "Abba, Daddy is going to die in the war." And I took a map and I showed her, "Noam, the war is in the south. We live in the center. And Abba is heading up north. He's even safer than us. And he was safe until October 9th, 2 days after.
Now, when you said that, because you write about that in the article, did you really believe that yourself, or you were just trying to help your daughter?
Definitely. There was I'm very cynical. And I remember I told you, many women stayed and they should, many men were called up and we stayed only women. And all the women that their husbands were called up to the north, we were very, I won't say happy, of course, but we were more calm than the other women that their husbands were called up to Gaza, to the south. Nothing happened in the Tzafon up north, for now. They were waiting.
But nothing happened, but something then happened for you just 2 days later.
Exactly.
So could you tell us about what happened on October 9th?
So I kept on working, from home. The kids were home. He didn't have any, the kindergarten didn't. The kids were home. And I remember speaking with PT on WhatsApp. We texted each other, and I remember asking him, "Where's the pizza knife?" And while doing it, I was like, "Roni, are you sure this is what you want to write to PT? Maybe this is the last message." Think what I had in my mind during that time. He used to send pictures from October 7th till October 9th. Of him. It started with a nice selfie with uniform. Afterwards, with the rifle, with the vest on him, and then finally with the helmet. And I felt like, okay, he's up for war. And after I sent him the message, after I texted, "Where's the knife?" He didn't answer. It was around 2:30 p.m. I thought it was weird because usually he's we'll finish the conversation now. We'll continue later because I'm in the middle of something, and he didn't answer. By the way, I didn't find the knife until now. I had to go and buy it. So I Googled, I went online to see the news, to read, and I saw there were a lot of chilufei esh.
Fire. Fire, an exchange of fire.
Exactly, up north. And I thought, okay, that's fine. Usually the brigade commander is not the first one to arrive at the scene. And after a few hours, I received a phone call from PT's brothers. As I told you before, PT is the youngest of 8. They are 7 brothers and 1 sister.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 of them were enlisted, called
that
up.
That one sister, wow.
She's the second, so she has. She's a very important figure in the family. We love you, Tipi. So as I said, that 6 of them were in Miluim. Part of them, the Kitsu. So I received a phone call from Aryeh, PT's brother, and
where does Pizzi fall out? Oh, you said he's the youngest. Sorry,
yeah, he's the prince.
Right.
So Aryeh called and said, "Roni, what's up? We're around, Netanel and I. Can we come and visit?" I'm like, "Sure, come. Great. I'm here." As I hang out the phone, I'm like, "We're in the middle of the war. Why are they coming? They're both in duty."
Something doesn't make sense
at all. So I went outside and I waited on the front porch, and I see Aryeh, and he's shouting, "Roni, akol beseder. Roni, everything is okay." I'm like, "Of course, everything is okay. I didn't ask you how you're doing." And then again, "Roni, akol beseder." And then I understood that something bad had happened. I look at him, and he says Pizzi was severely injured in a firefight against terrorists up north. And I look at Netanel, and Netanel is crying.
He's the other brother.
The other brother. I'm looking at him, he's crying. I'm like, "Netanel, why are you crying?" He said he's okay. Aryeh looks at me and he says, "He was shot in his face." So we sat down on the steps, and I remember people. We were in the main street also. Like people are walking around, for you to imagine how it looked like. A woman sitting on her front porch, and 2 officers hugging her. And I felt the need to tell people. I stopped with whatever happened. I'm like, don't worry.
He's alive.
Akol beseder. Don't feel. Everything is okay.
Oh, so they came as officers, not as your brothers-in-law.
No, they came as my brothers-in-law, but they were in uniform. They are officers, and all the it was like a scene out of a movie.
Wow.
If you
So
understand.
just to understand technically, because a lot of people are often interested in how people find out things. Doesn't the Army call the spouse? Why would the brothers be telling you and not the Army directly?
So it's a good question. I'm still waiting for the Army to call me and to inform me that my husband was injured. You have to understand, it was 2 days after the war started.
No one knew what was going on.
The chaos was unbearable. So we walked in back home. I felt like it was too much for the people to handle. Yeah. Then there was I always think about the scene in my head of telling the kids, the 3 children, that their father was injured. So first I called Noam to our bedroom and I told her, Noam, Abba nifza. Abba was injured. And I'm going to visit him now. I'm going to the hospital.
And
but
she was
okay.
the one who you promised nothing would happen to.
And she looks at me and she says, Ima, you promised me. You promised me that he's safe. You lied. And I remember I was dumbstruck. Like I had nothing to say.
What can you possibly feel when your child tells you that you lied to them?
Exactly.
And it's not just, what time you have to go to bed. Obviously, it's something very, very serious.
And think about it. It was like our evening was supposed to be like a
regular evening.
Yeah, you have to go now go to bed to take a shower, go finish whatever you need to do. And suddenly from one point to the other, everything changes. And then I called David and Itai, and I'm not sure even sometimes I need to remind myself to recall, did I say anything to Itai? I'm trying to figure out what happened that during those moments. My parents came and they stayed with my kids.
And what about your in-laws?
So Pitzi's mother passed away almost 10 years ago. Noam is the name after her. She's Noam Shoshana. And his father, you're asking about how do you inform the family? So as they received the news, Pitzi's brothers, about him being injured, they opened a WhatsApp group and they started, managing the whatever you need to do. So 2 brothers came to inform Roni to let her know. The other brother drove to say whatever it is to say to Pitzi's father. Each one had his own mission, his own thing he needed to do.
So back to after you told Noah, you said that you had lied. Well, what was your response? Did you respond to her?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say. I remember cursing in my mind. Ugh, so stupid. I gave her a hug. What can you say?
It's not so stupid. I said right when you said that just because but it's not so stupid because you were a mother trying to make your daughter feel good and feel that everything was going to be okay.
Right. And you continue the saying out loud and to yourself that everything is going to be okay. I'm here. Saba and Safta are coming. We're hugging you. I'm going to make sure that Abba is okay. We're strong. So we were off to Naria to see what's going on with Pitzi.
And which hospital was this?
In Naria, La Galil. So as we drove, you see a lot of army vehicles on the way, a lot of flags. No one is driving up north. You're the only one with the soldiers. And it was very, it took forever, the drive.
I would just interrupt you and say that I was going to say this before, that you sent me these articles before today so that I could prepare, and I read all of them. And I remember thinking that, like you said before, we were so focused on the South that I don't even remember that anything was going on up north.
Right. Exactly. So I was the lucky one to go up north when the war started, and to see how silent it was and how empty it felt. So as we arrived in the hospital, the guard in the entrance looks at me and he asks me, "Are you here for the injured or the dead?"
Now, I want to stop you because you sent me an article that's actually not published yet. And I want to just read the beginning, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Quote, "Are you here for the injured or the dead? This is what I was asked when I entered the hospital 2 hours after I was informed that my husband Pizzi was severely injured in a firefight with terrorists on the Lebanon border. Are you here for the injured or the dead? As if I had entered the gate of a wedding venue and was asked if I was on the groom's or bride's side. Where do I leave the gift? Passed through my mind. Are you here for the injured or the dead? Just a single millimeter was the difference between those two options." I can't even read it because I'm tearing up. So part of the reason I started my own podcast was that I wanted to focus on the individual, because sometimes we read about the numbers and how many were killed here and how many were hurt there. But there are so many injured soldiers, but sometimes it's important just to focus on the individual. And so I ask you, how did you feel when somebody said that? Because the way you write about it so poignantly, as if you were at a wedding venue, it almost sounds like the person who asked you that was just focused on the numbers and not on you as an individual.
It's a good question. I think it emphasizes the thin line between life and death, and the acknowledgement that, oh my God, I could have come here, or not even coming to the hospital, just waiting in my house with my children and waiting for the worst, horrible
knock on the door.
Exactly. And understanding that, like, it was on my way, with my brothers-in-law even don't remember him asking me that. But I remember it, like, it made me stop for a second and understand we're in front of a big challenge. Like, something is big happened, and we're facing something that the path has changed for us.
So what did you say to this guard? Meaning, one side is for this, one side is for that? I mean, was it really like that?
Yeah, sort of. I'm like, what? Ma? We're here for the injured. What are you talking about? I remember saying that. And it was very sad because there were families that arrived after, like, before us, eventually understood, because during the firefight, 3 soldiers have been killed. And 2 of the families arrived in the hospital
at the same time.
Yeah, and they were informed that their beloved was killed. Exactly.
So what happened next?
So we were waiting for Pizzi to finish the surgery, and the surgeon came out and told us exactly what happened, like literally what happened.
So he was shot in the face, you said before.
Just imagine, like, again, it was like in the movies, the firefight. The 4 terrorists, 3 crossed the border between Lebanon and Israel. And
these were Hezbollah terrorists.
Hezbollah, exactly.
And where exactly, what were they in Israel?
Arab al-Aramshe. It was, Aramshe is up north, which...
No, that's where on the Lebanon side. But where was
No. Aramshe is a Druze village
I see.
up north, very close to Admit.
Okay.
Which is a Jewish yeshuv. Planning to do whatever, horrific actions against Israelis as they crossed the border, like invaded Israel. Pizzi and his team were the first to arrive, and they were caught in an ambush and started, to in Hebrew you say lachtor lemaga, to engage. And from the distance between PT and the terrorists, it was like a few meters. Eventually, when PT stood up and tried to
fire back,
exactly, he was shot in the face. The bullet entered here, like literally here, crushed his upper jaw, and broke and got stuck at the first vertebra in the neck, which is like crazy. The surgeon explained that, and he said that his jaws will be wired and he won't be able to speak for a while. And he finished with, would you like the bullet to keep it?
So did you take it?
No, I was like,
no.
What am I supposed to do with that? But by the way, PT is like, until now, he's like, why didn't you take it? We should have done a necklace out of it, or like, no, thank you. I don't need to. I don't need a bullet to remind me how the miracle that we had.
So was PT up at that point after the surgery?
PT was conscious the entire time from the moment he was shot until the moment he arrived in the hospital into the ER.
Right.
He was able to communicate, sort of, and to write his name. And that's why when Arya
this
came...
This was after the surgery, you mean?
No, before.
Oh, before.
That's why Arya was able, PT's brother was able to tell me that he's okay because he arrived in the hospital and there's something to work with.
Right.
Let's say that. Eventually, PT was admitted in the ICU, and just the next day in the morning, I was allowed to go and see him.
But I could just ask you one favor, because some people watch us, but some people only listen, and you pointed to where the bullet hit him. So could you just tell us?
Of course. So the bullet entered just beneath the nose, like literally crazy.
And so when you say 1 millimeter difference between life and death in that article, you're not exaggerating.
I'm not exaggerating at all. That's exactly what the surgeon said.
So after the surgery, and let's just skip to the end, jump to the end, and then we'll go back. How is he? Is he okay?
Baruch Hashem, PT. How the doctors always say, if you get shot in the face, at least get shot as PT did.
Yeah. So he's totally fine.
Like saying totally fine. When you meet him,
right?
You won't.
You would never know.
We would never know it. Even it's like on the scars on the like the mustache line. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy to understand how everything is okay with him.
And what's he doing now?
He's back to work. And he's doing well, Baruch Hashem. The day after tomorrow, he's going to participate in the Tel Aviv Marathon.
Wow.
Not marathon, but...
Unless he's in the hospital with you giving birth.
That's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that.
Now, you talk a lot in some of these articles about, it'll be good and we're going to get through this, like, many of the heroes we've seen. So now that he's all right and that he's going to be able to run in a marathon, despite the challenges that he had, which were, significant, how do you feel?
How do I feel?
Are you upset that this happened? Thankful?
I'll tell you a story.
A lot of people sometimes talk about, obviously, you would have never wanted it to happen, but they learned something. It changed their lives in some way.
I'll tell you a story. PT go through. He speaks with teenagers and soldiers and share his story. And one time he in the end of the conversation, one of the teenagers approached him. He's sitting on a wheelchair. He was in a very, very, very severe car accident. His mother and sister were killed. And he and his father they survived the car accident, but he's on a wheelchair now. And he asked PT, when you arrived, he told them that he was able to go back to the point where he was injured. When you go there, האם אתה מקלל או מברך על המקום? Do you curse the place that you were injured in, or do you bless because you had such an amazing miracle? And the question was amazing because that boy says, when I arrive at the car accident location, I lost my mother and my sister, but I gained my life back. And PC said that for him, obviously I won't come and
Bless the place.
bless the place. I lost my soldier there.
He lost, you said 3 soldiers, right?
Right. There were like one of his from his team from way back.
You I interrupt because I like to do this in these podcasts when people mention that. Could you just tell us who it was and a sense about him?
Of course. So the deputy commander of the brigade, Ali Abdallah.
Samal?
No, he's Ganaluf. Ali Abdallah was killed in the firefight. Druze. Another soldier that was killed was Jawad Amar. And Piti's soldier was Gilad Mulcho. He was married like 1 month before the firefight. And he was I learned to know him after he was killed. And he was an amazing person.
Hashem Yikom Damo. But back to what do you bless this place or curse this place? So you said that he said, well, I wouldn't exactly bless this place, but what's the continuation?
But the thing is that from a mashber, from a crisis, PT sees it as if you can only grow for him. And I see a place that a year and a half ago was filled with blood and shotguns. And now I see trees and I see grass and I see people coming back home. And this is for me, the acknowledgement that from a crisis, you can grow.
And your children, how do they feel? If I'm allowed to ask, if you don't want to answer.
Of course. I think that they look at PT as a hero, literally.
Well, I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah, but when you see your father at the beginning, PT, he couldn't walk. He was only on a wheelchair. His jaws were wired. He had a collar on his neck. He didn't look well. He was tired. He wasn't able to speak. And you see your father from being like walking out, like going to the miluim as a soldier, as a fighter, suddenly come back
with all these things on his body.
Exactly. But then you see
that he gets better.
Exactly. But not only getting better, but struggling and maintaining to be optimistic. And that's the real thing of being a hero. It's crazy to understand how difficult it was for him to continue doing whatever he wants to do, even though he wasn't able to at the beginning.
Wow, so inspiring. I want to ask you about 3 more things, and then we'll wrap it up. So I told you before the podcast, and you knew because we spoke before even today, that I'm a rabbi. And I train rabbis. I train other rabbis. And you had mentioned 3 times, either in the articles or in our conversation, about silence. And the reason why that fascinates me is because sometimes somebody who's trying to take care of somebody else, let's say a rabbi in my case, the only thing they could do is just be silent and not talk. Because sometimes there's no words that could do anything in the situation. And sometimes it's just about Ba'asher Husham. Right? So there were 3 times you mentioned silence today. You mentioned on Simchat Torah on the porch in the morning when everything was noisy. You mentioned, you didn't say it now, but in the article you mentioned that when you first saw Pizzi after the surgery, I guess you said now the next day, and his mouth was wired, so obviously he couldn't talk. You mentioned right away, the first thing you said is the power of the silence, and I think you said, this is almost a direct quote, you said the power of talking just with the eyes.
Exactly.
And you mentioned something else about silence. Now, I don't necessarily remember the exact example, but obviously that's something that's very powerful, so important. And I'll just end my question with saying that I'm a rabbi and I've been at a fair amount of shivas in my life, both in America and here. And you always, the law is that you're not allowed to talk to the mourner until the mourner says something to you. And I think we've all seen cases where that's so difficult.
Right.
It's so difficult to be silent in today's day and age. So talk to me a little bit about that because it really fascinates me.
I think the third example in the article was I decided after 4 months of Pizzi being injured, like he stayed home. I was the caregiver, and he was able to gain his independence. And after 4 months, I decided to. I told him, Pizzi, there is no way that in this family, there's no one doing miluim. I'm enlisting. I'm going back to the army, and
when I read that, I was shocked. And I'll even tell you a story. I put very often I put all the information that my guests give me into AI, okay? And I obviously read it myself and come up with questions myself, but I just want to see what AI will have to say. And so when you sent me the material before I had a chance to read it, I put it into AI and I looked at it and it says, and it was talking about when you enlisted in the reserves. And I looked at the next question and it said something similar. And I'm saying, no, you got it all wrong. It was him that was in the reserves, not her.
I thought I was like, are you crazy? Right, she enlisted.
Right. So I was shocked. So please tell us a little bit about that.
Well, people that know me, they weren't shocked about it because it's part of us. It's part of our family. It's part of me. I was
so just tell us what you did in the army.
Yeah, so I was a company commander in my mandatory service for 4 years. Sometimes at the beginning, as a mother, I forgot that I'm a mother and not a commander. You have to adjust. They're okay. The kids are okay.
Sometimes mothers have to be commanders. We all know that.
That's right. And the war started, and
wait. You're not doing yourself justice. What did you do? What in the army? Okay. You said you're a company commander.
Company commander, and my mandatory service means that I had like about 300 soldiers that I was responsible of at a basic training base. The soldiers came from broken houses with criminal records, a lot of drugs. Very, very difficult, challenging, but very, very important. And then when the war started, I could tell you about how women feel from the other side, because Abba is coming back from Miluim, and he's the hero. And you also want to feel that you're contributing to the war effort. And
so let me get this straight. You have 3 kids at home, 3 young kids. You have a husband who is very severely injured, and by a ness, he's totally fine now. And so the first thing you think of is there won't be anyone in this house that's not doing reserves, and you run out to go to reserves?
Yeah.
Who took care of the kids?
Pizzi.
He was all right enough to take care of the kids?
I think so. I'm not sure. We had help.
Right.
I told my parents that I'm enlisting.
Right.
And there's no way that you have to picture it. There was no house in the yeshuv with both parents together at the same time. The country needed us. Like
what month was this exactly? When you went
beginning
to reserves?
Of February 2024.
2024? No,
yeah,
today's February 2024. Oh, right. Wow. It's right. So a year ago.
Yeah, a few months after the war
started.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that I had to find a miluim to do.
Right.
And I called each one of Pritzi's brothers and I'm like, take me to miluim. Eventually, the 5th brother agreed. And he told me, be ready for next week to come and to be an operations officer in my brigade. And that's what I did.
Where was this? What brigade?
646. And after a few weeks, the brigade left Gaza, and I decided I want to continue doing whatever I could do. And a few weeks later, I joined a different brigade, the Tzanchanim, the paratroopers brigade. And it was very, very important for me because my youngest brother, Yoav, is a sniper at the Tzanchanim, at the Sayeret, the special unit. And I felt like as if fulfilling my mother's wish that I'll keep an eye on Yoav. And that's what I did like until a month ago.
Wow. Ein milim. We've said that so many times. There are no words, and there really are no words. Wow. So it's not just Pizzi that's the hero, although the focus has been on him. You're the hero as well. And this was totally voluntary. You didn't need to go at all.
I needed silence. You're asking about the silence. I needed silence from from home.
Okay. The second thing is that you started your article after the quote that I read before, and you wrote the following. You talked about the women who were waiting in the waiting room, I guess, and you wrote, women with head coverings, women with tattoos. One holding a baby, the other a cup of wine. One laughing out loud, and one who hasn't laughed in a long time. And so when you think about the unity that started at the beginning of the war, and okay, it may have dissipated a little bit, but it's still there in many, many ways. So it doesn't matter whether you're religious, secular, it doesn't matter whether you're right or left, old, young, whatever. Talk about that a little.
So I think that we spoke about silence before and the ability to speak with the eyes. And a lot of injured soldiers are able, I saw when PT was in the hospital and people came to visit him, he had also injured soldiers from the past that came to visit him. And you could see the eyes speaking in a different way. It's the same
with the wives.
With the wives. You don't have to explain. You don't have to feel like the need or the urge to explain exactly how you feel, or sometimes the silence is just enough. And people really want to help and to speak and to say and whatever. And sometimes all you need is just, like a hand and a good hug. That's enough.
The silence.
Exactly.
Sometimes the silence is good enough. People,
exactly.
We all need to learn that. I want to conclude in the last few minutes that we have. Really, I should have said this at the beginning, because the entire cause of this podcast was in a convoluted way, and I won't go into the details now. I'm coming across the Forum of Wives of Wounded Soldiers. And like I told you before we started, I have many, many colleagues, rabbinic colleagues in the United States who have been trying to help as much as they can from the United States, not only them, but their congregants as well. And they've been trying to direct support to all kinds of things, but they want to make sure that the support is going to the right places. So I've had the great honor and zechut to be able to do that for many of my rabbinic colleagues and friends. And so the reason for this podcast is simply to raise awareness, like you said about your own podcast at the beginning, and to try and help people understand that it's a long road. Exactly. So your road was shorter, thankfully, thank God, than many others. But we all know people, wives and families, that their road is very long and is still going on, and it could be for years and even decades. And people are not aware of this road, right? So and I include myself, I didn't know the extent of this road until I really started trying to understand what this Forum of Wives and Wounded Soldiers do. And so it's not only about bringing the equipment for the soldiers and the vests and the helmets, and that was and remains in some ways very, very important. I'm not downplaying this, but tell us a little bit about this road, because your road, like I said, may have been shorter, but you're a member of this forum, and so tell us a little bit about it.
So our road of rehabilitation is not over yet. PT needs to have more surgeries and more follow-ups, and of course. But when I meet women, wives of wounded soldiers, I always knew it, but now I hear it more one-on-one, how difficult the everyday life is. Just even think of 3 times a week, the husband needs to get to the hospital and he's not able to drive. What do you do? Who takes care of the kids? You want to maintain a normal life for your children also. And usually everything is on the wife's shoulders. And it's not easy. It's not regular. And I always say, when I start my podcast, is that these women sent their husbands to fight for our country.
For Am Yisrael.
Nachon.
It's not just our country, it's the Jewish people.
Exactly. For our Habayit shel kulanu. The house
a collective.
Exactly. And suddenly you find yourself fighting, that woman fighting for her own house, own home, her children by herself. But Baruch Hashem, there are a lot of people, like really good people along the way that helps. It's not easy.
So people always ask me, why do people need financial assistance? Meaning, doesn't the government, doesn't the army? What's the answer to that?
Unfortunately, there are many, many, many wounded soldiers, not only soldiers from the beginning of the war. It's something, as I told you at the beginning, no one called me and told me that Pizzi was injured. It was too much. And it is too much. And it's a lot to handle for the government, for different organizations. And of course, we receive the guidance and the financial help. It is there. But sometimes it's not enough because one person that needs to take care of 50 families, injured families, is not capable of doing it. So yeah, we still need help.
Now, I heard from another one of the wives that that's involved with this forum that she told me that once the injured soldier starts sleeping at home, that the financial assistance is ended. Is that true?
Depends. Depends on the how severe the injury is. If it's physical or emotional, the injury, a lot of things that adds up.
Right. So we're not going to go through all the details, but I think we both, know, and you much more than me, but just in my, little involvement that I've had with this, that the bureaucracy can be very, very confusing.
Very much.
You have to have a tremendous amount of patience, and there are women who were working and had businesses who had to stop and don't have the funds that they need. So we hope to be able to, to support this forum and all the other, very important causes that this war has caused. So there's so much more to talk about, and maybe you'll come back another time. I think that the best way to end, unless you want to say anything else before we end.
I want to thank you. And it's so important to understand that there's the injury, the story behind it is not only the soldier's one, it's also a family.
The family, right.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity.
That was exactly one of my goals, in order to make sure that we understood that this was, a lot of people around, and especially the family. But I guess the best way to end is that, as we said, you're, in Mirza Hashem, with God's will, you're about to give birth. So we're very, very, very happy that you'll be in a hospital for smachot and not for what you were doing. So thank you so much.
The same hospital where Pizzi
was injured, was operated on.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow. So in the same hospital. A beautiful closure. Wow. So promise that you'll send us some pictures, and that you only will be in the hospital for these good reasons. So thank you so much for joining us. Both you and Pizzi are so inspirational. You're heroes, and you should be able to continue for many years to give to the Jewish people. Thank you. Amen. Thank you for joining me on Defining Moments. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star rating and a review. Please share this podcast with your friends who, like you, want to be inspired both by this period in Jewish and Israeli history and by the people who are making these defining moments happen. Let's not squander this unique opportunity. Maybe the next defining moment will be created by you or me. Until next time, I'm Rabbi David Fine.